if anyone ever said this is organized crime, they don't know what's going on. This is a very disorganized crime.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Denkin, and welcome back to Becoming the King of Pot. With me, as always, is my former criminal and hell of a guy, cousin, Bruce Perlowin, the King of Pot. Bruce, how's it going today?
It's gone really great, Todd. I'm looking forward to today's amazing, adventurous story.
Yeah, me too. It's really been thrilling for me to hear it from all perspectives, of how you really became the King of Pot. So let's get right into it. You're coming off a big load, right? A load came in and everything is rolling. You got, $9 million in revenue flowing through the company, right? So let's pick it up on what happens. Don't you get arrested, right? You're going to jail or you're in jail.
Yeah. What happened? Let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit, like 2 weeks.
Right.
All right, so I'm in county jail in Ukiah, California, where I was just arrested for an outstanding warrant in Florida for a Jamaican smuggle I did with the daring and dashing Smith brothers.
And the cops thought they were so cool because your name was Steve Travis, right? But they thought you were Frank Wood, and they had no idea you were Bruce Perlowin.
Yeah, they said to Becky, we know that Steve Travis is really Frank Woods. So, Steve Travis, that's an interesting thing. You reminded me about something that happened that's part of this story. So, I'm in county jail. The Mary Colette comes in, 32,000 pounds. Great. We got $9 million. And I sold the pot for 3 to 3.25 off the boat to my guys. So, when I say 30,000, that's $9 million. Unless I decided to sell some, it was better. It was 3.25. It was a little bit more.
Yeah, but that's also a street value. Sorry to interrupt, but that's like a street value of like 30 million.
Yeah. The FBI will multiply it times, I think, 12, and the DEA multiplies it times 17 or something of what it comes off the boat at. And they're right. I mean, that's an accurate number because it doesn't, you don't sell a pound to a guy that sells a pound to a guy that sells a pound. A guy that sells a bale to a guy that sells a pound, it tries to break it up to ounces, and in some cases down to joints. Sure. But anyways, so now we're all thrilled to death. We have this motorhome up on the top of the hill monitoring the next load that's coming in. So I get bailed out of jail. I'm in a jail. I can't go on the dock because, I'm hot. We don't know what they know. Do they know about, the whole operation, or is this an isolated incident from the outstanding warrant in Florida? Okay, so we're not sure, but we had to take precautions. The first thing we do is Cecil was up at the on the top of the mountain in the motorhome, and he had there's bunk beds that would come down like this, and then there's a bed there. Well, we modified it so it went down a little bit further, and there was sea charts here. So he had the entire Pacific Rim gridded out, and he was tracking the boat. We know it takes 21 days to get back up. All right, so it's 21 days it's going to hit our dock, and he's tracking it all along. They're giving their C-84, J 215, so he knows where the boat is. All right, and all of a sudden, let's go to Las Vegas to the Larry Holmes. Was it Larry Holmes?
Yeah, Larry Holmes.
Yeah. The fight. So we're all in Las Vegas. The offload crew's all in Las Vegas. It's going to come in 2 days. We got plenty of time. So we're all in Vegas. The boat comes in, and I don't know how it happened. I don't want to throw Cecil under the bus, but he was tracking it. And so it comes in on the 21st day, like it always did. And somehow it was supposed to come in based on his tracking of the 22nd.
So what happens? So your whole crew is in Vegas. You're watching a fight, the biggest fight of the year, right? And what happens? How do you find out?
Well, what happened was the guy goes to a payphone. He calls. Somehow he reached somebody who reached my Uncle Mickey. And my Uncle Mickey called Craig and says the furniture is in, which means the load is in. Now, Craig was not in Vegas with us, thank God. He was there, and he had just finished a meeting with his 15 crew. He had his 15 crew. My offload crew, Mark the Shark and Bearded Steve and that group were all in Vegas. All right, there's about 5 of those guys of 15 that Craig had. And they had just had a meeting with them saying, look, we need more work. They knew a boat was coming in. They didn't know when. They knew it was getting close. We needed work. We want all of us to work, because, it's $15,000 it was $5,000 the first time, $12,500 the second time, and $15,000 the third time, because by the third time you're really experienced. Yeah. So he has a meeting with them. He says, okay. 1 hour later, he gets the call. He leaves the meeting an hour later. He was in an apartment because they got busted, right? So he had to move out of his apartment and he was in a hotel. He rented a hotel, one of those extended stays or something, south of San Francisco. They call him up. They have the meeting. Hour later, he calls it back. Okay, you guys all want to work? Meet me at the dock now.
Wow, okay. They must have been psyched about that, right?
Oh, yeah. It was good. It was great timing that they were actually there. 15 guys show up, and Craig goes down there. Now, at the dock, it was a 1,000-foot concrete pier. You had one gate at the beginning of the dock and one gate at the end. So if anybody came, they'd have to go, anybody, the DEA, FBI, they had to go through two gates, and we'd jump in the speedboats and be gone long before they got even close to the second gate. So all 15 were there, and Craig goes, we don't know what's happening. I don't know if the FBI's at there, or DEA or FBI or both are at the end of the pier. We don't know if we're hot. We don't know if they know the load's coming in. I'm going to go down there because you got the dock master to the rescue. All right. It takes a lot of balls under those circumstances, to go down there. And it says, you guys stay here. If I do 2 clicks on the walkie-talkie, come on down. So he goes down there, and he's talking about it, and he says, you can see, you're hyped up to the max. There's an actual term for sensory acuity or something. You can hear really good. You can see really good. It doesn't matter if it's dark. You can see everything. You can hear everything. And
just because of the adrenaline flowing through your body,
It's massive amounts of adrenaline. So he goes up there, and he goes, are you the captain? And he sees no heats there, right? He goes, yeah. He goes, what's the bail count? Because that's a very important, because he was always fanatic about that. I counted it when we got to the stash houses. He goes, 500. He goes, okay, click, click. All 15 guys come in. Now, the trucks aren't there, but I don't know if you remember from earlier episodes, I had a semi parked there all full time and a 24-foot truck parked in front of the semi. So they decided to load the whole thing into the semi and take it off the next night. That was the plan. So when he got there, he saw them throwing the bales from the hull up onto the deck of the boat. His guys come down. He takes his position on the deck of the boat, and he's looking around. The guys are just sitting there with their hands in their pocket. So he takes a friggin' bale, 70-pound bale, and throws it up. You're super strong at that point. Adrenaline's really good. Hits the guy right in the chest.
Yeah, he's a big, thick dude,
Yeah, he was, wrestling champion and weightlifting champion. So it hits him in the chest, and from that point on, for the rest of our tour out in California, they called him Superman.
Oh, funny.
And he goes, get to work. So they had to walk, as opposed to being able to take the boat and drive it, the truck, the 24-footers right next to the boat where it's close. They had to walk at about, not that far, about 100 feet over to the semi. So they decided to put it all in the semi and then unload it the next night. So that's what they did. I got 2 stories. Some I hear they put it all in the semi. We're remembering 45 years ago. Some said they put it in the truck and they backed the truck up into the warehouse. There was a warehouse at the end of the dock as well. Either way, they stored it safely. They secured it. The boat leaves. It did not leave and go where it was supposed to go, which is out of the San Francisco Bay. It went to China Basin or somewhere, in the bay. All right. Now we're in Vegas at the fight. I'm thinking, I got to get my guys back there. So we didn't know where Mark and Steve were, and the whole team was. So I send people like Bobo and Becky and myself, and we go to all the hotels which we think they may be at. All we know, we were all going to the fight, had, front row seats and everything. And so we are just looking around, going to work.
No cell phones, no pagers, none of that shit back then, right? So
right, we had pagers, but we really didn't use them that much. The pagers, for some reason, we just always, I don't know why, walkie-talkies and payphones. So we couldn't find Mark. Somehow we found him. Well, we got a hold of them. Okay, now we got to get out of there. You can't get out of there. There's no commercial flight. They're booked completely. Every commercial jet and every commercial plane, you can't even charter a plane, is booked. We had our plane there. So finally, my Uncle Mickey got us a friend who had a plane that wasn't a regular charter plane, but he had one. So between that plane and my plane, we flew the whole team back to California. Not a very, big flight, very short flight. All right, so now the next night, they're the same as every operation. The Mark's crew gets in the speedboats. They bring the speedboats over to the dock, park the 2 speedboats at the bottom of the dock. They go up. Craig brings his 15 guys, and we offloaded that boat the next night. And it's pretty interesting. We used to say, if anyone ever said this is organized crime, they don't know what's going on. This is a very disorganized crime.
Well, it seemed to be just good timing, and it seemed to work out, though,
Well, the good thing is that we had the resources. We had the equipment on hand.
That's the key.
You had a semi, you had a truck.
And you had lots of money, so you could just go buy something whenever you needed it. Whenever you can throw money at a problem, I'm sure you did that, right?
Yeah. Money really makes life easier. It really does, because you either have or can buy the resources. Like we said, I went in the middle of the night, bought a $250,000 boat for cash, right? Because the guy's not going to let you take his boat out to a rescue of marijuana operation. The boat gets busted, he loses everything.
Sure.
All right, so now Steve Travis is busted. The name is no good. The house
just to be clear, let's explain what Steve Travis is and how you became Steve Travis.
When I became a fugitive, you have to get fake ID. I had Arthur Promoff and his partner Don. They did this full time. All they did was they would go around the country getting fake ID. They would go and they say, we're from the Children's Research Foundation. We're researching, child deaths in this area. So they would go and get a list of all the child deaths. Oh no, they would go, and then they would go to the graveyard and find a child that died at 7, child that died at 6, and then go and order the death certificates. And that's what they said, we're the Children's Research Foundation, because what are you doing getting 20 death certificates? With the death certificate, you could get a birth certificate, but you don't want to order 20 birth certificates, so that you'd order 1 birth certificate or 2 birth certificates and have one go to Philadelphia, one go to Florida. From there, they forward them back over to California. So we had all these mail drops set up, so it wouldn't make a red flag. Okay, somebody's getting 20 birth certificates from this area. Once you had the birth certificate, you can then get a Social Security card. Once you had that, you could open up a bank account and you would get what you call pocket litter, so a library card, a police ID, not just a driver's license, a bank stuff, so maybe even get a couple credit cards, anything with your name on it. So go to Las Vegas and get those cards that print out your name, when you do the gambling. So I was Steve Travis. That was my fake ID. And ultimately, if you had enough information then to get a passport. At that point, though, it's dangerous, because once you get a federal passport with fake ID, you're breaking the law. And
up to that point, you're not breaking the law?
No, none of that other fake ID. It was
having a fake ID is illegal. What do you mean?
No, it's not.
What do you mean?
In the commission of a crime, it's illegal. But not to have fake ID.
To obtain one is not illegal? To create one is not illegal?
Nope. Well, maybe to create a fake one. And I don't know what the laws are today, but back in 1980, it is if you didn't use it in the commission of a crime and you didn't go after the passport, that was where you stepped over the line. So I didn't have a passport for Steve Travis. So everybody had fake IDs. I had Steve Travis and I had Frank Woods' driver's license in both names. But I didn't carry Frank Woods with me. I carried Steve Travis.
Did you keep it in like a stash, like a go box, like you see that Jason Bourne has in the movies? Like he goes, unfolds his, here's my Belgium passport and here's my, whatever.
But I didn't have the money, but no guns. Right. Okay. No silencers. And so but Steve Travis is now burnt. So if there's a car registered to Steve Travis, it's hot. A truck registered. I rented the house on Skyline Boulevard in Steve Travis's name. So right after this load comes in, thank God we was rescued successfully. because the dock master was there, took care of it. We had to move out of that house. So we moved that, packed up the motorhome with this $1 million worth of electronic equipment in it, took the antennas out of the trees, took the flagpole, which had one antenna. I think that was a single sideband. The one up on the top of the mountain, I think, was the ham radio. And then we had aerials. They call them aerials, copper lines buried in the ground in a fan shape so that it boosts the signal receiving and going out. So we lowered the flagpole and tied it along. It was made to do that, and drove the RV to a RV park in Mill Valley, and so that was its new location. And we had to move out of the house, and thank God we did, because after we moved out of the house, the landlord called and said the FBI was here asking questions about you, about Steve Travis.
Right.
So
did you just instantly become Frank Woods, or
no?
Or did you...
That was it. The Frank Woods was busted too. It was burned.
So who did you become?
At that point, I was Bruce Perlowin.
Who's that guy?
So I had exactly. I had no fake ID, and it was very, very, a lot of us guys are doing podcasts. The old OGs and all the smugglers from yesteryear, and I'm listening to a lot of them to get the history, to get timing right. And it's funny because everyone's paranoid. You're always, are they following you? Or is my phone's tapped? I mean, we had guys coming and checking to see if the phones were tapped with, counter surveillance equipment. And so you never know what's busted, what's not busted. And you never know, if you're in a car and the police come up to you, you get rid of the car, if they question you. So, because you assume they take the tag down. And you never know how hot you are or aren't. And this moment, we just didn't know. Again, you had to take precautions. And the precautions were anything with the name Steve Travis, gone. No boats, there never was boats. The boats is a whole different
and you couldn't even sell it to
that.
someone new, because then that puts the cops onto them, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you burn the ID. It's done. Now I'm busted, and again, I had no clue when I went to trial what they knew and what they didn't know. In fact, later on, we're going to have the FBI agent, DEA agent, one of the DEA agents on the show that was investigating and busted me. Was part of the team that busted me. There's 125 agents in an interagency task force ultimately investigating my operation, because it was huge. It was gigantic.
Yeah, he tells a great story. He's a really nice man, and I really enjoyed talking to him, so I can't wait to get him on.
And one of the good things about him is we find out when they actually did start to investigate me and my operations in California, and it was not at this juncture. This is the early 1980, or this is late 1980, at the end of the year. This is the fifth load that we brought in, which is one heck of an accomplishment to do an 8,000-mile journey.
Oh, it's $50 million bucks, and
refueling.
It's $50 million bucks in a year. It's a pretty good year.
9 times, so about 50 million. And I was bringing in other loads in other places, which, when I got busted, I never talked about those. We brought some into New Orleans with my partners, Fred and Ed Shore, some up in Virginia. And in those, I wasn't doing anything other than just investing money. I'd say, here's $500,000. So when the 40,000 came into New Orleans, I just tripled my money or quadrupled it. I don't remember, what the exact mathematical formula was back then for those particular loads.
Ned and Ed Shore?
But Fred and Ed.
I find it interesting that all of the characters that you have done business with and partnered with, right, they all have interesting, names and nicknames, and, there's the Bobs, right? And there's the Smith brothers, and now there's Fred and Ed, right? I mean, don't you find that interesting?
Yeah, well, what would happen, Fred and Ed, we called them the Jays. I don't know how we came to that. If I would meet you, Todd, okay, and we were going to do business, I would immediately give you a name. You'd be Edwin. All right? You look like an Edwin. All right? So that would be your name from then on. I don't want to know Todd Denkin. I don't want to know the first. No one knew anyone's last name, so we all had code names or fake names. like Tex, I mean, he's another one which we'll interview, one of the crew members, and in fact, he was on the dock that night offloading the second shanty load.
Nice.
And the thing about the shanty load was it was just like, it's becoming at this point somewhat routine and normal to have boats come in. I mean, 5 boats in a year, that's almost like pretty close to every 2 months a boat's coming in.
That's constant work. I mean, there's constant like unloading, stashing, retailing or wholesaling out, right? Yeah, that's just a machine that's just constantly working.
Yeah, and there's a million little parts to it, and you're constantly perfecting each little part. All right, so now I got to go to trial Miami.
All right, so you're headed to Miami, and how do you walk away from this multi-million-dollar operation? You got 200 people or so working for you, and you got a load coming in every 2 months. How do you ensure that this machine keeps working while you have to go sit in a courtroom for something a long time ago?
Well, a lot of the trial is prep for the trial, and it's a relatively short, maybe a week in the actual courtroom. The thing keeps
Unless
going.
you go to jail, right?
I
mean, they could just, put you into custody right then and there if you lose.
That's true. That's true. That could happen. But, it was a machine. Craig was out there. Cecil was out there. Paul Hill was out there. All the lieutenants and all the generals were out there. They all knew their job. In fact, let's talk about the next load that comes in, which did not come in.
Okay.
It got busted to high seas. Beginning of the downfall.
Oh.
Everything has its arc,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're just knocking out of the ballpark. You strike when the iron's hot. You peak, and then you go down. All right. And typically, very, very few people from the old days made it out without getting busted. There were a few, that I personally know that never got busted. In fact, one just finished his book, and we'll be interviewing him down the road when we talk about the other smugglers. Okay,
Isn't it busted or killed, right? Is that how you end up?
Busted or killed, yeah. Or in a maybe 0.5%, you get away with it, and you live a life that is a great life with all the wealth that you've accumulated smuggling marijuana. Okay, so we're moving. There's no slowing up of the boats going down. All right, so the shanty comes in, and when was that? The October of 80, and then in October, November, December, January, February. So in February, we have the Rachel N coming back up well, first we had the Taylor Day one, the first part of Taylor Day that I offloaded it to the guy to the boat in Clarion. Now we have the Rachel M right behind it. I mean, it's that's like a friggin' a ferry service.
Right. Yeah, and it's a 35, 40-day trip, right? So it's not like, you need to have it, scheduled like that just to keep the machine going.
Right. Okay. So now we have the Rachel M, and I'm confused about the name because we changed the name. I believe that could have been the Karen Lynn that we changed the name to the Rachel M, or it was the Audrey J and we changed it to Rachel M. It's supposed to be bad luck. In this case, it was to change the name of your boat. So he's coming up with 32,000 pounds, and this guy, the captain, was Corky Bill.
Quirky Bill or Corky Bill?
Corky. He was quirky. Okay. But the name of his boat was Corky, and his name was Bill. All right. So you put them together. That's typical fisherman, protocol. Name the guy in the boat he drives. So Corky Bill. He's coming up. He's the captain. This is his second trip up, and he's supposed to be 200 miles offshore. And I never got the story if he was he was supposed to be 300 miles offshore, but he may have come in too close. What happened? The Coast Guard started a surprise operation, which we did not get word of. It fell through the cracks in our counter surveillance.
Wow, how does that happen? You got $1 million worth of technology in a Winnebago, right?
Well, because I guess they just told at the base, they said, okay, this is going to be your mission. Stop every boat under 200 feet All right, that's less than 200 feet or smaller, within the 200-mile range. All right, Corky was the second boat they came upon.
Wow.
So you would have heard the radio transmission. Yeah. Okay, we're stopping a boat. We would have known they're out there, but he was either the first or second one that they came upon, and they said heave to, and he wouldn't. The standard procedure when a boat like that is you pull the plug, you let the boat sink, take on water, sink. You take your suits on, your survival suit, because you're going to die of hypothermia out in the cold Pacific if you don't. And you jump overboard, and the Coast Guard rescues you while your boat is sinking with all the evidence. And you say, sorry, that we were taking on water, blah, blah, blah. They can't prove nothing.
Whoa. Let's talk about that for a minute. So the protocol was if you're in trouble, sink the boat, right? Because the Coast Guard will rescue you? That's brilliant.
Well, if the Coast Guard's approaching...
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, you lose $9 million, of course, but, it's better than getting busted, I guess, right?
Right, because if the option is, which is what happened in this case, you lose the boat and the load, and you get busted, and it costs you a fortune for legal fees. Right.
Right.
So
wait. When you do that, what do you lose? What does that cost you? Certainly the boat, which is how much? A couple $100,000.
The boat was about $350,000.
Okay, so $350,000, and then you got $9 million worth of weed, but it doesn't cost you $9 million, right? It only costs you
$10 a pound.
$10 a pound. Got it. So you're still out, $300,000, $400,000.
No, that was a very expensive load. I remember. Okay, let's reverse that. Okay, that was the second part of the Taylor Day load. The Taylor Day went down there to get 30,000, picked up the first 30,000, started to sink. We covered that in the last couple episodes. All right, now the second 30,000, we paid $35 a pound, because that was a Fred and Ned's connection, not mine. My guys have been flying over to the West Coast, dropping on the beach for the village for a long time now, a couple of years. Fred's guys was new, and it cost them $35 a pound to get it to the West Coast. So we put down, it was like $1 million, $950,000 for that 30. It ended up being 32,000 when the DEA waited in. Anyway, so then we had to pay $100,000 for them to move it and take it off the beach while we got the next boat, the Rachel M, to go down there and get it. All right, so you got the $35,000, then $100,000, the cost of the boat, the cost of the lawyers, and the cost of the money that we gave to Corky Bill to keep his mouth shut, which is an interesting story. I'll get in that in a second. Okay, so Corky Bill doesn't pull the plug, doesn't jump into the water, and next thing you know, we find out there's 4 people aboard the boat. Go, what is going on here? What he did, he ran the boat in circles for like 8 hours, getting drunk out of his mind, because he knew the gig was up and he couldn't jump in the water. Why? Well, we heard in the news that he was arrested with the Rainwater brothers. That was the two brothers. His last name was Rainwater, and a 15-year-old juvenile. A 15-year-old juvenile, Costa Rican national. Corky Bill ended up being gay, and he had brought a 15-year-old juvenile boyfriend on the boat with him. That's why he didn't pull the plug. The 15-year-old jumps in without a life, without that super duper insulated life, high, whatever it is, foul weather gear, whatever. He would have died. Even if the Coast Guard was 2 hours from picking him up, you couldn't tell. You couldn't be sure. So his boyfriend would have been killed. And that's why he never pulled the plug. And that's why, he broke protocol by bringing a 4th person aboard. He broke protocol by not sinking the boat.
So what happened? So what's happening at this point?
Well, I'm in Florida at trial.
Right, no, you're there. But what happens to Corky Bill?
So Corky Bill gets arrested. They all get arrested to get put in jail. And the part about the trial was I told one of our jury and trial consultants, Kat Benego, I just lost the load. Now, things are not going good, and it doesn't matter if they're not going good. It's can you pivot and make
Get
good.
The load, right.
Right. Can you make lemonade out of lemons? Right. All right, where's the silver lining in the dark cloud? The old saying, it's always darkest right before it goes completely black. So, that's what the pessimists say. All right, so, and Craig says to me, because he's in Miami, he had to fly back to Miami to be a witness in my trial. He says, Bruce, she doesn't need to know that. All right. Now back to Corky Bill. He gets arrested, and he's not facing a lot of time. This is interesting. So we said, okay, for every year you spend in jail, I'll give you $40,000. Great. Okay.
And you do that because you don't want him to rat on you.
Right. Right. And so we send the $40,000. I'm actually, now that I'm reviewing the history and go for the podcast, remember, who did I give the money to give the money? We know I gave the money to someone. Oh, no, Fred and Ned, because Craig was back out there. They flew out and they gave the first $40,000.
And were Fred and Ned always together? Or was there sometimes just Fred and sometimes just Ned?
No, they're always together. They're always together every time I saw them. Okay. So, big brother, little brother. All right. So they gave the $40,000 to someone who gave it to Phil DiGirolamo, who was the guy we rented all our boats from. All right. He owned First Cabin General down in Moss Landing. He said he gave it to Corky Bill's father. We heard month and a half later from the lawyers, Corky Bill never got the money. I said, whoa. Well, if I don't know Corky Bill's father, but I knew Phil. Phil was, Phil's been known to not be on the up and up, So we didn't think Phil did not give him the money because
you dealt with
Corky
criminals
Bill
that weren't honest.
Yeah. Actually, our group and most smuggling groups, you have the most honorable, ethical people.
Yeah, amongst yourselves, right, but not to the outside world, right.
Right. So honor among thieves and a very, 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 very close-knit group of people in all the organizations. It's a general theme that runs through us all. All right, so Phil probably did give it to his father, but it never got from his father to Corky Bill. So I sent another $40,000. I go, this time give it directly to the father. And again, I don't remember who I gave it to, but we're figuring that out now. Who we gave it to, because maybe they never gave it to Phil or to Corky Bill's father. I'm sure they did. And Corky Bill's father was the guy that was pocketing the money.
Well, yeah, son's in jail. He doesn't need $40,000. Right?
Right. And who knows what kind of father the guy was. I never got much intel on the guy to this day. I'll ask around now that I'm curious about it. So Corky Bill ends up, the Rainwaters got probation, something like 18 months probation, so our community service, so they didn't go to jail. So he was in jail for 6 months. He ended up getting an 18-month charge, and he ended up deciding to go into the witness protection program. He was a really bad drunk, too.
What became of his 15-year-old boyfriend?
They exported him back to Costa Rica.
Oh, got it.
So, he was an illegal alien. Smuggling marijuana, caught red-handed. Right. So, but the point is, it's added all up. 18-month sentence. You do 2/3 back then, not 85% like you do now. 2/3 of your time was 1 year. He had already served 6 months. He had 6 months to go. And rather than wait 6 months and do 6 months jail time in a camp, where you have a line on the road, and if you step over the line, there's no fence or, gun towers. You've escaped. You're out of bounds, right? So that's it. It's a country club. Rather than do 6 months, he decided to go into the witness protection program and snitch on everybody that he knew.
Oh, nice. So Corky Bill is a rat. Right? So
yes,
he moves to some small town in Idaho or Arizona, and he's in the witness protection program. What happens? What's happening around that? What's happening next?
Well, so I'm in Florida at the trial. So what we're going to cover next in the next episode is the trial. And actually probably the next 2 episodes, because we're going to tell the trial with my perspective and Craig's perspective, and then the trial with Alan, the hotshot attorney from New York, who is one of the best attorneys ever on the planet Earth, and from his perspective. And at the same time, while that's going on, we're going to cover the Rob and Ann load that came in. And finally, we're going to get back to finishing up the second half of the Taylor Day, with its, still down there and being repaired down in El Salvador, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. But in this case, it ended up in Costa Rica. And I was determined to get a second load out of that boat. And we did. And it was successful. But, well, maybe it wasn't successful. I shouldn't give away the storyline. Keep everyone to see their pants. So,
well, which one was it?
I'm not going to say. They're going to have to tune in.
No,
so the trials, the 2 episodes of the Robin Ann, and the Taylor Day, and finally what happens at the end of a career in marijuana smuggling. We're going to get to that later on.
All right. So one last thing I want to cover is that I want to know, like, what's happening, how is the company operating? What kind of boats you have on the water as this one gets busted? And, are there still just a constant flow of every 2 months? Or what has that turned into?
It was really funny because when I told the jury and trial consultant that one of my boats just got busted, it was like no big deal. It wasn't even an issue. It's like you lost a bale of wheat or something, one bale, because there was boats going down constantly moving from the center of Columbia to the village on the West Coast, boats constantly going down. We didn't even skip a beat.
Right, so it's just calculated loss when you lose a load.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't, nobody freaked out. Nobody got upset. It was just, okay, is Corky Bill going to keep his mouth shut? Is he not? Do we have to move? What do people have to do? Some people decided to retire at that point. Some people decided, let's finish up the couple loads that are still in the water and then get out of here. All different things for an organization. But it does create a crimp in the smooth running operation of the company. All of a sudden, the first crimp was me getting busted for an outstanding warrant. Not a big crimp because, it was not affecting anything on the West Coast. But him getting busted, that had the potential to really affect things on the West Coast because he knew all the fishermen. Next thing you know, the FBI is everywhere talking to people, trying to track them down, going here and going there. So,
so talk about what is really happening and what is the scuttlebutt, around the company? Are we starting to talk about, holy shit, have you heard this? Have you heard that? Did they talk to Bill? Did they talk to Fred and Ned? Did they talk to the Bobs?
The scuttlebutt was that there was not much heat at all at that point. It was an isolated incident, the boss getting busted for a Miami operation. And when I came back, it was like, everything's fine. Just keep going. Even though Corky Bill, it was just something we had to deal with, okay? If he was going to talk, he was not going to talk. It put everybody sort of on high alert, but we didn't know at that point. Are they watching the dock, for instance? Are they watching your houses? You move, you change houses. You may even change your offload spot, which we didn't. We didn't need to. And you never know. That's the scary part. I never was scared. Whether I blocked out that part of the possibility of getting busted, I never thought I would. So you block that out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it paralyzes you. So, but you don't know if you're being followed, if your phones are being tapped, and you just do your normal counter surveillance. You sweep your house, you sweep your cars on a regular basis. You go to pay phones, you do all the normal precautions, and you just keep going.
Yeah. And that's what the feds do, right? They watch and they build a case and they watch and then they watch you some more. So I would think that you'd be looking over your shoulder a little more.
A little more, yeah. But not any more than normal. You're always, every little thing, like and make sure that the guys are, whoever, 200 people are going out and buying new Cadillacs and new cars and fancy speedboats and wearing gold chains. You're always monitoring that. You're always telling them what to say if they get pulled over. You have a right to remain silent. Yeah. You say, you can give them your name, but that's it. I'm sorry, but on advice of counsel, I've been advised not to answer any questions. So you're not being a smart ass. You're just saying, I'm sorry. You're being polite, saying on advice of counsel, I've been directed not to answer any questions without my lawyer present. And you got to train that into the people. You got to inculcate that into their mindset.
Right.
You got to make sure that they're always carrying $10,000, which just seems counterproductive if they find it. But if they get an accident, we didn't have insurance. You had to make sure you had $10,000 to cover all medical things. Make sure your cars are always in perfect running order. So
yeah, all makes sense. The life and times of smuggling marijuana. This is just fascinating stuff, and I am looking forward till next week. So next week we're going to talk about more in depth on the trial. Right, your trial in Miami from the Jamaican load. And a couple other boat rides back and forth to Colombia while all of that's going on, right?
Yeah, it's just very interesting of the reflecting on back, because this is we're covering the 30-year history that I call it the golden era of marijuana smuggling from 1960 to 1990. That's when it was all happening, corresponding with the hippie revolution and a million other changes going on in America at the time. Marijuana was helping to fuel all of that and fund a lot of that.
Sure. Yeah, it sure was.
And one last thing, in the meantime, creeping in this whole time, little by little, is the entire homegrown era. You know, it started up in Oregon and Northern California, Mendocino County. And there wasn't big loads, you know, not like today, but that started taking root and little by little and expanding and growing as we were operating in this 30-year history.
Yeah, and Mendocino, Humboldt, you know, growing capital of the world, really, you know. All right, well, thanks for joining us, everybody, on Becoming the King of Pot. I hope you're enjoying everything that I'm enjoying as I hear these stories from the King of Pot and how he did all of this and made it all happen. So, Bruce, we'll see you next week, and we'll talk about that trial.
Great. The trial is very interesting and, unfortunately, an integral part of becoming the King of Pot.
Yeah, I bet. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.